Hello, I'm Doug Simpson from Feathercraft Kayaks. I'm the founder and the designer here at Feathercraft. We're doing this video from Vancouver on a rainy December day to show the assembly of the new open double kayak, the Klondike. The boat comes in a bag that you see here, and it's one large bag and has a handle on either end so that two people can lift it. Or if you're going a short distance on your own, you can actually put it on your back and carry it a short distance with the shoulder straps, and there's a very minimal hip belt. There is another option. If you want, you can you can take this bag here, which is what we call the red leaf bag, and this is the same bag that we use for the K1 and the Catalano. It has padded shoulder straps and a hip belt hidden in the back. Now what you put in this bag is all the frame parts and all the small parts such as the seats and the cross ribs. It's a comfortable carry, and it's much easier to carry the boat a longer distance on your back. That just leaves the skin. If you go with this bag, you also get this bag, which we call a skin bag. It's much bigger than the skin, but the skin will fit in here and also a lot of your gear. So, as I mentioned, the basic system is a single bag, or with a little extra investment, you can get a two-bag system. So I'm going to put this bag aside, and we'll begin assembling the kayak. First, let's take the gear out of the bag. I have a rudder, set it aside. Seat slings, spray skirts, the skin. These are hatches, foot pedals, repair kit. Maybe I'll talk about the repair kit. In the repair kit, you'll find a metal casting, aluminum, and what we call a tongue. This is the rudder tongue and the rudder casting, and we'll put it down close to where the stern of the kayak will be. Also inside are 3 cans of glue. There are glue for the hull, and then there's another type of glue for the sponsons. The hull glue can also be used for seam sealing. And there's some lubricant here, which you should use on the joints of the kayak if you're going to leave the boat assembled for any length of time. And of course, assembly instructions. I'll put that aside. This is the coaming. It comes in 4 parts. What we'll do is we'll assemble the coaming, and then we'll put it aside. It's actually easier to assemble it upside down. And scratched on the underside is R for right and an L for left, just to help you line up the pieces. Incidentally, in the background there are some Japanese drummers practicing, so I don't know if it's going to be picked up on the tape, but if it is, it's not thunder, it's some drumming that's going on. This is the spray deck. We'll get into that in a little while, but we'll just set it aside for the time being. Now, what I have here is the bow section. I can tell that it's the bow section at a glance because it has these foot pedals right here. And I'm just going to open all these pieces up. They're shock corded together. The pieces are made of aluminum tubing, 3/4 inch, OD. It's an aluminum magnesium alloy. It's very strong and it's very resistant to corrosion from salt water. Now these are the small pieces, and I found the keel section for the bow. It has one tape here of black color, and you line that up with the tape that's here, just one. There's a hole here and a spring button. Click those two into place. Now I'll do the same with the stern section. You'll notice that the stern section has more length to it. That's another way of telling it from the bow. This one has two black tapes on it. That indicates in our system, in all our boats, that it's a stern piece. So, before going on, I'm just going to set out the cross ribs, and they're all made of white plastic. It's a high density polyethylene. It's very strong. We have very few, if ever any, breakages of this material. And they're numbered. That was the seats that I just put back. Okay, so I'm going to start with the number 1 cross rib. It's in dark letters right on the cross rib itself. And I'll go to the bow, and there's a pin that sticks out of the cross rib. I tilt the cross rib forward, and there's a black piece of plastic here. It has a hole facing towards the stern. I put the pin in the hole and then swing it back. Now the other parts here, I just line them up. Oh, wrong side. Now it's not probably that easy for the camera to get in the angle here, but let's see if we can get in here. And there's a pin where my thumb here is, and it goes into the hole, and then we call these a twister. It's spring-loaded. You just twist it to lock it into place. Same with that. So let's go to the number 2 cross rib, and we do exactly the same thing. Tilt it back. Now we can go to the gunnels, which are the top bars, these two, and the chines, which are the bars that are underneath the gunnels. Now what I did here was, the deck bar has, let's see if you can see that, 2 little knobs sticking out, and it goes into the number 2 rib there's sort of a keyhole shape, and then you rotate it to lock it in place. Very easily done. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing with the stern section, starting with cross rib number 6. Watch how first of all, I take the gunnel that's closest to me and the chine. These are on the starboard, the right side. And I set them down, which gives me access to the keel. And then I just tilt it forward, get the pin in, swing it back. Okay, number 5 rib. We're certainly establishing a pattern here. One thing that I should say, you don't have to force these things. Take your time and just look to see how things go together before you start doing something. Usually you'll find that if you just sort of look, okay, this is how it works, you can make it quite easy on yourself. Now, we have a choice right here. We have a choice. This is the number 4 rib. This boat is, of course, primarily a double kayak. And most people are going to set it up in that configuration. But the boat can be used as a single. Now let me show you something. There's 2 sets of cross rib retainers here. If you're going to go with the single configuration, you'll put the cross rib where you see it here, fairly close to the number 5 rib. However, if you're going to go with the double configuration, you'll go forward to the more forward set of cross rib retainers and insert that. And that's what we're going to do here. So bear this in mind, that if you are going to set this boat up as a single, at this point you could put the cross rib back here. Don't fret. If you want, you can change this cross rib while the boat is mostly assembled. So you could change this when the boat is set up. All right. We've got a stern section, we have a bow section. I'm going to unfold the skin now. I think I'll take these 2 over here. And notice that I still have out the number 3 rib. So, the skin. What you see is, of course, black, and it's a hypalon hull that you're looking at. The hypalon is a rubber-based fabric. There's a coating of rubber on the inside and a heavier one on the outside of the fabric. It's extremely durable, and it definitely is expensive. It comes from France, this material. It comes in big rolls, and we cut it up. And we cut it into 2 big panels, and then it's masking taped, and then sanded, and then glued together. It's a lot of work, but you end up with a very, very durable hull. The deck material is a new fabric, Polytech, and it's an interesting fabric. Feel it, if you can. It has a texture, and that texture is an embossed urethane. You're not really feeling the fabric, which is still inside farther. There's 4.5 ounces of urethane coating on the outside that is textured or embossed. And then there's another 1.25 to 1.5 ounces on the inside. So there's coating on both sides of the fabric. The fabric itself very seldom gets wet. So the fabric is very stable, incredibly waterproof, and extremely long-lasting. Well, let's put the bow section. Before I do that, let me just show you one thing. We're going to be extending, we're going to be putting the bow frame into the bow skin and the stern frame into the stern. And then we're going to be extending the extension bars in order to force the two pieces, the two halves apart. I'm going to show you, before I put the frame in the skin, how this is going to work. The reason I'm going to show you here is that it's just easier to see. It's hard to get the camera in there. Let's do the keel. So I'll find the lever bars. Now this is the extension system here. So let's assume that these two frames are in the skin and you've separated it to about there. This is what we call the vertical lever. It also becomes one of the stern deck bars. This is the horizontal lever. Both of them have a stainless steel pin sticking out. The vertical lever has a plastic block, a black one. Put that in this grooved hole here, and the horizontal lever fits into the black plastic. Then you pull on this and a pin pops up right where my finger is. It's a stainless steel spring button. And that's how we extend the frame. We do it first to the keel, and then we do it to the two chines, and then we return to the keel to the second hole. We do the two chines to the second hole as well, and then we do the two gunnels also to the second hole. There's 3 holes here, and we end up in the middle hole for all 3. The reason we have 3 holes is if the skin is ever expanded through wear, you can go another hole, or if it ever for some reason becomes too tight, you can go to the hole that's closer. So now I'm going to go back, put the frame in the skin. But before I do have one other thing I'd like to say. When you store the boat, we suggest that you take these pieces off here, that you take them apart if the boat has been used in salt water. The reason is there's a lot of surface area here, and salt can build up inside the tube and freeze these joints. So it's better to pull these apart unless you've lubricated the joint, and that's different. I mentioned lubrication. It's actually called Super Lube that comes with each repair kit. I might even recommend a better lubricant. Just a minute. I think I have something here. Now we don't supply this because it's an aerosol spray can and it doesn't travel very well. But this is called Bow Shield T9, and it's really quite an amazing product. It's made by and developed by Boeing. You spray it on joints, for instance, on here and inside, or on any of these insert joints. You spray it, and it'll last for many months, and the joints will move freely even after having been used in salt water for some time. I highly recommend this. It can save you quite a lot of grief, and I use it on my boats for sure. Anyway, let's put this back on, and we'll put the frame in the skin. The important thing to remember here is try and center the frame as you go. You want to watch this keel here and make sure that it's sliding along the center strip that's glued on the bottom inside of the hull. And you want to also make sure that the deck looks like it's somewhat balanced. So I'm going to push it in a little ways, not too far, and I'm going to go to the end, and I'm going to feel to make sure that the frame sits under my cupped hand in a centered way. And you can look down there and see, that looks pretty good. It doesn't always happen like that. Now inside, there's some Velcro that's glued to the keel, and I'm going to do it up. Hard to see because it's black, but once you see it, you'll understand what it is. It's just a Velcro closure. You do it up around the keel to keep the frame centered. Here comes the stern. I'm just making sure it doesn't end up in the coming through the hatch hole there. Caught on something, probably up here. Yeah, I can see that it's caught on the cable for the rudder. So watch out for that. Again, I'm trying to make it centered. It's coming along fine. What I'm doing now is I'm just pulling up the rudder cables to make sure that they're above the chines. Just make sure everything's free. And I'll do up this Velcro on the keel again. Now I'm going to do the first extension of the keel. So I'll join it up and take my lever bars and repeat what I showed earlier. Sometimes it doesn't quite line up, like now. There it is. Incidentally, some people, in order to make it easier to line up, will draw a pencil line along the tube. Hard to describe what I mean, but they draw a pencil line along the tube and it shows them the alignment of the spring button as you're extending. So now I'm going to do the chine, only this time, instead of going to the first hole, I'm going to go past the first hole to the second hole. There's the first hole, there's the second. So I'm in the middle second hole on the two chines, and I'll go back to the keel, and I'll crank that one more time. All right. 2 gunnels. You'll have noticed the colored tape. Red is on the left port side, green is on the starboard right side, and the yellow is on the port chine, and blue is on the starboard chine. Okay, the extension's all done. I'm left with these 2 bars. The horizontal lever goes in first and connects with a bar that you can't see but you can easily feel on the deck, the stern deck. This one goes in first above the cross rib and then back, so that these little knobs, again like the bow, go inside this keyhole here. So I'll bring it up over the cross rib. Bring it back, and I'll connect it up. And then I rotate it. Okay. Now, I think what we can do now is put in the number 3 cross rib. Notice that it has this black bracket on it. That's for the mast, should you ever choose to do sailing with the kayak. Now this one has spring buttons instead of twisters, but it works the same. There's still the pins that go into the holes. Sometimes you have to rotate a tube just a bit in order to get it to line up. See what I'm doing here? I'm just turning that just a bit. All right, that's in place. So at this point, I can put in the seats, and then I'll get into some of the combing assemblies. Normally we have black seats, but in this particular boat, we happen to have a teal seat and a teal seat cushion. That was just because we were using the boat, this very boat in fact, in the tropics, and we were trying out a lighter color to see how it was in the sun. We quite liked it. As far as setting the seat up, the Velcro goes, actually I think it would be easier, excuse me, to do this one because you can see it. There's a piece of Velcro sewn on the seat. So the bottom does not have a Velcro, the top does. It should show up well. And the Velcro is closer to the front. So this is a shorter distance than here. There's also a tag on the back, usually. This one says bow. So I know that it's the bow seat sling. I'm doing something right here. Well, put this facing forward. And then I'm going to wrap this around the gunnel and do it up with these buckles. And this one is going to go around the chine, and I'm going to do it up to itself. Now this is a departure for us with these buckles. The reason we have that is, well, there's a couple of reasons. It makes the seat adjustable, so you can adjust the height to any height that you desire, from very low to very high. If you're traveling with a child, that's it, or even a very small adult, it's really good to be able to get that person up high. Whereas if you're a big person, you may want to be down low. Generally speaking, the higher you are, the more power you have, but the less stability. I might say that stability isn't a big issue in this boat. It's quite a stable boat no matter which configuration of seats you use. So I'm putting these buckles over the gunnel bar. And I'll do it on the other side. The other reason why we have these buckles is that because you can change this boat's configuration from a single to a double, you may want to take the seat off and put it somewhere else. We'll get a bit more into that in a minute. Okay, so I'll spread the seat out a little bit, closer to the cross rib here though than the bow rib. Now I'm just going to put the lower section under the chine. I've opened up the Velcro. And on the other side. So this seat is set quite high. You can see it's quite high. But with just a simple adjustment, I can lower the seat and then take up the slack with the Velcro. I'll repeat with the stern seat, sorry. Again, the Velcro is harder to see, but it's here and it's facing up, so I know I don't have the seat upside down. This one is set quite low. Again, I'll bring the seat about, well, fairly close to the stern, to the number 5 rib, but not all the way adjoining it. And I'll just take out the slack with the tab that's underneath. You just run it around the bottom of the chine and then back up. Hello. In 2005 we introduced some new coamings on all of our kayaks, including the Klondike here. So I'm going to just show you the changes, and then we'll cut back to the original video. Used to be a multi-part fiberglass coaming that was quite separate from the rest of the kayak, and we installed it with a groove. And it was a fairly complicated task. We've really simplified the thing. Now there's a strip that's sewn and welded all the way around the cockpit opening. And at the ends of the cockpit opening, and at the stern and at the bow, there's some white plastic that's sewn right into the ends. And then in pockets underneath the coaming, we slide this plastic here, and they overlap, and it creates quite a rigid coaming. One other part, we've changed this bar system just a little bit from the original boat and the original video. So I'm going to do an installation here, and then you can see how the thing goes together, and then we'll cut back. First of all, this goes together much the same way as before. There's a bend in this bar here. It faces down. And then, as before, it has to line up with the bar that's already been inserted, slide it into place. And I'm going to go to the bow now. And this goes in the same as before. That's fine. Once you've done that, there's still the screws to do up, but it's been simplified. These are the same screws as in the original, but there's not those hooks that you may have seen before. Now once you've done that, there's 2 slots that are cut into the coaming. Move this forward and slide this plate into there. Get it underneath the foam and the plastic. There we are. Once you've done that, it's time to tighten up the straps that are here. There's 5 of them. And they hold everything together in terms of creating tension. In order to do that, perhaps I'll come to the center one here. Take it over the bar here, and then also over the gunnel. And then feed it back under the gunnel and do it up on itself. You can leave the loop that's created fairly loose initially. So I'm going to repeat that with all 5. Now that we've got these straps done up on this side, we can put the plastic in. I'd already done the bars on this other side. I'm going to show how to put the plastic in on this side, just easier for the camera to see. There's two on each side, and there's a bow and a stern. They're marked. The bow one has the curve towards the bow. There's little straps. That's just for hauling it back out again. And on both cases, they orient towards the stern. So I'll start with the bow one. There's a pocket underneath this, and I'll just reach over for now. Just push it underneath. And slide it until just the webbing is sticking out. And it overlaps what's up there on the bow, the other piece of plastic. Now I'll go to the stern one. Similar situation. There's a little tab underneath here. And this push the piece of plastic in until only the little piece of webbing is sticking up. The next step, of course, is to snug in all these pieces of webbing. There's the 5. And that just holds everything secure so that by the time you blow up the sponsons, it's actually quite rigid. One other thing I'd like to point out about the differences, in the old combing we had what we called toggles that helped attach the spray skirt. Now there's Velcro that has been attached to the underside of this combing rim, and there's also Velcro on the actual spray deck. And when you put it on the bow and the stern, and then you just feed it in, make sure that the Velcro connects, and it holds it very securely. So that's it. That's the end of the changes of the assembly of this new combing system. And so now it's back to the original video. Thank you very much. There's a couple of things to do yet. We're almost there. These are called hatch rims, and I'll just put this one on the stern. It's made of ABS plastic. Start at the pointed end, and there's I guess you could call it a skirt. Fold it over top of the rim, part way, go to the stern, do the same thing. Now, if you're going to close this up, let's assume that you're off somewhere rather than loading some gear. Turn this down. It's like a dry bag. Inside the cover, there's a neoprene strip that fits around the edge. So between the two of these, you got a pretty dry seal. Make sure that you do up the hatch from both sides. Now I had undone these just buckle on to the other side. While I'm down here, I loosened off this cord before sticking the frame into the skin. Now I'll tighten it up. There's, I guess you could call it a cord lock. Just pull that. It's important to have the cord fairly tight. If you ever wanted to grab on it for a rescue, or if you wanted to tie gear on, you don't want it to be all floppy. The casting. If the casting fits tightly, this one fits fine. If you find that it fits too tightly, you might want to put this casting on the skin before you put the frame in. In this case, there was no problem, but it can fit a little tightly. And the rudder. There's a pin. In fact, there are two pins sticking out, very small ones, out of the main pin shaft of this rudder. And there's a keyhole. Just align it up, push it through, and then turn the rudder into place. Notice where I'm connecting this. You want to have a small amount of tension here, not too tight. I'll connect the foot pedals. These are called sister clips. Hold it up in the air at 90 degrees to the two clips. Same with the other side. Okay, one thing I haven't shown you, the foot pedals. These are foot slings, I guess you could call it, foot harness. And inside here, running above the chines is a rudder cable. The adjustment is this white toggle. It's a cord lock. And it adjusts the length of the cord. This has an adjustment of its own. If you look at the back, you'll see there's a piece of webbing and a ladder lock buckle. The reason for that is there's an angle here. And some people like to have their feet at a different angle, and this adjusts that angle. So do look for it, and you'll see what I mean and how it works. So what we do here is we run this shock cord beside the seat sling, on the hull side of the seat sling, and we attach it to the number 2 cross rib above the chine. So let's do it on this side. I run it under the seat sling, around the number 2 rib above the chine, and buckle it to itself. And now I can just clip it on to my rudder cord here. Now the reason we have this system rather than a track, well, there's a number of reasons. One of the main ones is we find that this is a large area here relative to the rest of the kayak, and we like to load gear in here. And with this system, you can load gear in here and tie it to the gunnels and the chines and have your feet inboard of that gear. Another reason is the distance here is not great, and by having this system, you can actually move your foot all the way inside this cross rib for someone who's like 6'7" or something. So this boat fits a very large person. There's lots of leg room. I'm going to run the other side now through. Do another hatch, bow hatch. It's exactly the same as the stern, it's the same size. Incidentally, if you're using the hatch, you may wish to have free access to the hole here. You can remove this deck bar, put your gear in, and then replace the deck bar. If you're going to do that, you may find it easier not to have the sponsons blown up fully. Just easier to get the bar in and out. All right, let's attach a couple of seats. Just by way of explanation of these seats, there's some side pieces of webbing on the seat. Let's do them up here. And that's kind of tricky because it enables you to use the seat as a camp chair. Actually, it's very, very comfortable on a rocky beach to be able to get into this seat. Anyway, I'll slacken this off. The webbing from the seat here goes around the cross rib, in this case the number 2 cross rib, above the chines, not below, and then does up to itself. Same with this side. And these are just buckling up behind the seat as you see it. And this is adjustable. Same thing with this seat. There's Velcro underneath the seat cushion, and that keeps it all from sliding sideways. And I'll show you a couple of other adjustments when I get this seat attached. This one buckles in the same way. Now these buckles are adjustable, so you can pull them up, and by doing so you move the seat angle back like this. This is the seat back. If you let it down, for instance, and also let off this, the two straps at the lower, you can bring the seat vertical or even facing forward. So you have quite a large range. I find that it's nice while I'm paddling to be able to adjust the seat. If I've been sitting in some configuration for an hour or two, I can change it and change it to some other angle. Okay, we're just about ready to let her rip here. We have to blow up the sponsons. There's an air tube on each side. Let's drag out one here. And you inflate these orally. Okay, I've finished blowing up the sponsons on each side. They go from the stern up to the bow. And I'd like to show the configurations now that come with the kayak. This is, of course, the open version. Incidentally, this bar here, the one that I have my hand on, there are 4 thumb screws, and you can take this bar off. We use the bar in order to hold up the spray deck so that it drains properly, but you can remove this bar if you wish to paddle open with the open boat concept. So first I'm going to put on a 2-person spray deck. There's aluminum, I guess you could call them hoops, that are sewn in place into the spray deck permanently. Start with the bow and just pull it over the coaming, and then go to the stern on the far side of you and pull it around. Now, there's shock cord, of course, running around the perimeter, but just amidships, from about where my hands are, there's Velcro that's glued to the underside of the coaming, and there's Velcro that's sewn onto the coaming here. So just reach under and run your hand on it. That just helps the deck remain taut amidships. Notice that there's an extra panel. Now it's black, I understand it would be hard to see, but it's here. And if you were going to use a sailing rig, you would cut out, we would give you a template, and you would cut out a hole here for the sailing rig. Underneath the spray deck, there's a sewn tab, and it has a piece of neoprene sewn on it, and that faces up here, and that, if you push it underneath, holds the water out if you're not using the mast. So this is the configuration for 2 people. Notice that these rims sit on the bars here, so the boat is draining well, and it accepts a spray skirt. It's a removable spray skirt that you're probably familiar with hard shell kayaks, and you can put a cockpit cover, I should say, on top of that. You can also put on this a sea sock, and it doesn't come with the boat, but it is an option, a sea sock for the bow and stern compartments. Now there are other configurations. As I indicated earlier, you can set the kayak up to become a single-person kayak. Let's take this one off. The second option that I have here. Now, before I did this, I'm not going to bother, but what I would do is I would take the seat sling off of perhaps the stern, and I would put it where my hand is here. But first, I would take this cross rib, which is the number 4, and I would move it back to this position where my hand is. And I indicated that before we put the frame in the skin, what that was. To do that, deflate the sponsons. It's really critical that you get the tension off the skin. Unscrew these 2 parts here where my hands are to disconnect the reinforcement bars, and then put it aft. Then, once you've done that, you'll find this fits very well. Oh, and of course there'd be one other thing. You'd have to adjust the foot pedals to fit a single paddler. So, assuming that the cross rib had been moved, and you wouldn't have the bar in the middle, it would be aft here. This is how you would see the single version, and it's the same size rim, it accepts the same spray skirt as with the double configuration, and it uses the stern seat sling and the stern seat. There's one more option that we have. I was paddling recently with my son and his young friend, and we were paddling as a trio. My son is 8 and his friend was 9, and we had a great time. We were off on a 5-day trip in Okinawa testing this boat. This is a little too tight. It is a prototype, but it worked. Now for this, we had an extra hatch. This is the hatch that we use on the stern of our K1 kayak. And we had put in place another seat sling, and she had this small little seat in here, and she was quite snug and comfortable. And of course we had made a small spray skirt. Now this is something that can be purchased. It would be a semi-custom order for us, but we'd be happy to do it. Well, I think that just about completes the discussion. Perhaps I could say just a couple of things about taking the boat apart. It's obviously pretty much the reverse of what you've seen. When you're taking the extension bars off, those are the 5 bars that had the spring buttons. Take the 2 gunnel ones off first, then take the 2 chine ones off and leave the keel to the last. It keeps the whole boat taut. Finally, take the keel one off. So that's the best order. And other than that, I wish you happy paddling. Thank you very much.